Hi there. Thanks for following along our series on building with Next.js and Headless CMS. Today we're going to be focusing on redirections. How can we redirect from one URL to another in a way that's really efficient? This is really important as a site gets bigger and maybe over time you have a certain URL that you want to move to another one. This is really, really common. We want to enable our marketers to be able to do this. So how do we write code that enables that? There's three things that need to happen. First, we need to set it up in the CMS, and luckily we're using Agility CMS, and redirects are a first-class citizen in there. Second, we need to actually pull those redirects into our code base into a way that's really efficient so that we can check them. And then the third thing is we need to actually check it. So we're going to write something into our middleware.ts that's going to check our list of redirects. We're actually going to use something called a Bloom filter for that, so we can do a really efficient check just to see if a URL is a redirect, because this is going to happen on every single call, so it has to be really efficient. We're going to check to see if it's a redirect, and if it is, we're going to redirect over to it. Let's jump into the code. All right, so we're in our Next.js project, and you can see we've added a few more things into here, and we'll share the link to this Git project so you can actually pull these out and use them for yourself so you can see how they happen. But the key is that we're actually going to store two JSON files in our project. So we're going to need to use a build event to actually build them. And they're both going to be JSON files. One's going to be called our redirections Bloom filter. So a Bloom filter is like a super high efficient dictionary that doesn't tell you what something is in a dictionary, but it tells you whether it might be in that dictionary. So it's a really efficient way to look up a key. And then we're going to actually store the redirections JSON themselves that we pull down. Now, we're going to actually run something on the pre-build. So we're actually going to use a tool called TSX. So you're going to want to install that to add a TSX from NPM package. And we're going to run node/prebuild.ts. So in our node directory, we've got this pre-build. And what we're going to do is just call rebuild redirect cache. Let's see how that works. Let's jump into it. So what that's going to do is actually, first thing we're going to do is call get redirections. I'm not going to jump into this, but all that does is it basically pulls down the redirections from Agility and saves them to the redirections.json file. That's pretty straightforward. But what's really exciting is that now we're going to take all of the keys out of that dictionary. So we get a dictionary back from Agility with the path of what URL we're on and whether it's a redirection. So we're going to take all those and we're going to create something called a scalable Bloom filter. Right? So we're going to put that in there, tell it how long it is, and then actually build that Bloom filter up. So we're going to add all our keys into that filter, and then we're going to actually save it as JSON. So that's going to get saved into here, and we're going to redirect it and actually save out that file, and then we'll just take a look and see what that looks like. So let's go ahead and actually run this. Now, since we put this under pre-build, we can run it just with pre-build, but what's really cool about this is that we'll also run when we call npm run build. So if I just call yarn build, you can see it's going to do our pre-build event, then it'll do our build event. So the pre-build's done. Let's see what actually got saved into here. So under the redirections.json, you can see we've got one already from the CMS. Let's jump into the CMS to see what that looks like there. So in the CMS, under the pages section of Agility, we click on URL redirections, and here we go. So I've added one called /test. It's going to go to /home. Let's add another one. Let's do /test2. And you can see I've used this syntax here. I could also just do it like that. It's nice to use a / because that denotes, it's kind of a way that we can denote wherever the beginning of this application is if you wanted to use that. But we can do just / as well. So /test, let's go to /blog. Okay, so if we used to have a page called test2 and we want to redirect it over here, we could go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and create that redirection. So that's saved into our system. All right, and so we've already got one that came back, and we've got a list of, you can see we've got /test is going to go to /home, and then there's a Bloom filter here that if I look at that, I can't really read that, but it's a kind of a special format that's used. So let's go ahead and close those, and I'm going to run this again. Oops. I'm going to let's just run pre-build this time. Looks like there was an error in our build, but I'm not going to worry about that just now. Okay, so our pre-build ran, and you can see that the list of redirections now has both test1, test, and test2 in there. All right. So how do we actually use that now? Now that we have that pulled down into JSON files in our project? Well, what we need to do is check for that redirect in middleware. So middleware is a special file that runs on every single request. And we already have some stuff in our middleware that's checking for preview that we looked at in a previous video. But I've added another else to this big if statement here at the very end to say, you know what, let's check to see if this is a redirect. So this has to be a very high performing call. So we're not going to do a lookup. We can't run, as of this writing right now, I can't do a fetch from middleware. So I have to have something locally that I can check. And middleware runs out on the edge. It doesn't have a file system, but it does have access to the files that are in my project. So because we built up this data folder during our build routine, or actually in the pre-build routine, I can actually use that. So let's look at how check redirect actually works. So in my lib/CMS content folder, I've got this check redirect. So what we're going to do, we're going to ignore the root path. We're going to create this scalable Bloom filter based on our filtered redirects, which we're importing in. So if you can use an import to pull in JSON from part of your project in something that's running in middleware. So that's really important. If I try to do like file system operations or other things, it won't let me do it. We don't get a full version of Node in middleware just yet, although I believe that might be coming soon. Here we go. So we get our Bloom filter. And then we just check to see if it has that path, and we're going to do a to lowercase on it. If it doesn't, we just skip out. We just say, you know what? It's not a redirect. We don't have to check it. This is a very high performing, very efficient lookup here. So if we do get past the Bloom filter, that means it might be in our list of redirections. So let's load those redirections in. So we've got a strongly typed redirections map that we're going to load that into. And we basically just say, hey, is it in there? We check that. Check our path to see if it's in the redirections list. And if it is, we return it. Otherwise, we return null. Pretty straightforward. Back to the middleware now. If that redirection was returned from the check redirect call, we're actually going to say, if it starts with the front slash, we're going to clone, because when we do a next response.redirect, it needs to be an absolute path for whatever reason. We actually just grab the current URL and switch it. So we clone the current URL and switch the actual path name of it. So it'll keep the same host name and anything else that's there. If it is an absolute path, so it starts with HTTPS, then we'll just redirect directly to it, okay? So next response.redirect, it wants to have an absolute path. So let's just check it and see if it works. We can actually run it in development mode to check to see if it works. So I'm gonna go here. Let's just do /test, see what happens. You can see we're gonna redirect. Hopefully, here we go. It redirects to home. Let's check their test2 redirect. And it redirects to /block. So it's working great. So we've got a place where now, let's actually go and add a new one into Agility, into the backend to make sure that's gonna work. Let's do, test3. Test3, and what's nice is I can go ahead and pick a page from my sitemap to do this. Let's redirect to the /team page, okay? Go ahead and create that redirection. Now, it won't work right away. Test3 will just throw a 404 until I actually run pre-build, all right? So if you're implementing this in the wild, you're gonna wanna set up a webhook. I'm not gonna go into that in this video because I wanna keep this video nice and short, but we can set up a webhook that when a redirection changes, and only when it's a redirection, we can actually do a rebuild of our site. And places like, Next.js, Vercel, Netlify, they have really easy ways to hook this up. You can set that up as part of your DevOps as well. It is a bit of a pain to have to do a full rebuild of your site to do that, but that's because we want to get these redirections into our Bloom filter in our redirections.json so that we can check them in middleware and have it be really, really highly efficient, okay? So that's why we want to do it that way. So let's just go and double check. So the assumption is that we've made a change in Agility, the webhook fired, and then now the site rebuild. And let's go ahead and check over here, check test3. I'm just going to hit this again. And now it's going to redirect over, once we get through the cold start here, it's going to redirect over to the /team page. So a really great way of enabling your marketing team to create redirects without you having to get involved as a developer. And we don't have to get any external tools involved either. It just works with what we've got going on. If you wanted to do this without setting up a full rebuild of your site. If you wanted to avoid that, you could use something like an external cache provider or some other things like that that can work. I've seen this working using like Netlify blob storage or Vercel blob storage. Some other CDN providers have the ability to do like key value stores at the edge. So there's a lot of potential solutions like that. This is the simplest one, using a Bloom filter and a JSON file that's actually part of your project. I really hope you enjoyed learning about redirects in Next.js with Headless CMS. I'll see you next time.